Solutions Grant. A part of the agenda are several attachments that should be acknowledged and accepted for the record. This item is on file and available for public inspection in the office of the City Clerk, room 202, 200 Orange Street, New Haven, per Honorable Brian Wingate and Honorable Darrell J. Brackeen Jr., co-chairs attest. Honorable Michael B. Smart, City Clerk. The mayor's proposed CDBG CARES Act spending plan may be viewed on www.newhavenct.gov. For accessibility related requests, please contact 203-946-7833 voice or 203-946-8582 TTY prior to the meeting. Public comment and testimony may be submitted via email to publictestimony@newhavenct.gov before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. If you wish to present testimony at the meeting, you must register in advance at the link provided or by calling 203-946-7934 before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Public can view at the link provided or listen by phone at 646-558-8656 or use the webinar ID presented. Oh, we will now present members of the committee and introduce my co-chair, Alder Brian Wingate, and you can do the attendance if you like.
Yes, thank you so much. Alder Brian Wingate, co-chair, CDBG, and I will ask my colleagues to do the attendance. Starting from anywhere on the virtual side.
Alder Ron Hurt, Vice Chair, 3rd Ward.
Alder Frank Douglas, Vice Chair to Community Development.
Alder Kimberly Edwards, Ward 19, Community Development.
Alder Steve Winter, Ward 21, Community Development.
Alder Carmen Rodriguez, Ward 6.
Alder Eli Saban, Ward 1.
You're muted.
I believe Alder Kubo was speaking. I believe she unmuted herself when someone muted her, so she is here.
Thank you. I turn it back over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Co-Chair. We will now begin the process. For those that are wishing to present the initial testimony, let them enter into the room. We have our Alder Sal DeCola, who has just joined us as well. If you are here to present, okay, there we go. Please state your name and address for the record. I see Ron is here, and I believe Michael Garmany probably should be here as well.
All right, this is Ron Gizzi, Office of Management and Budget, 219 Aramo Terrace, Hamden, Connecticut.
Michael Gormany, 45 Jefferson Road, Branford, Connecticut.
Okay, Ron, the floor is yours.
Okay, I'll just start with a quick introduction. I think everybody's aware of this program, but I'll just do a quick recap of it. So far, the city has received just over $5 million in CARES Act funding. So we have the first round of CDBG funding, which was 2.2 million approximately. We have a first and second round of ESG funding, which is approximately 2.6 million. And the first round of HOPWA funding is about 160,000. So we are expecting another second round of CDBG and HOPWA funding, and that'll be a need-based. The first allocation was based on our formula allocation, which our normal consolidated plan funding is based on. So the main thing with this funding is we must use it to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. So what we're doing tonight, we have the mayor's proposed allocations, and we have 9 general categories that will be part of a substantial amendment. We're amending our 1920 annual action plan to HUD. That's one of the things we're doing here tonight for your approval. So of these 9 categories, these are general categories. The HUD wants us to keep this amendment general and flexible, so we don't have to amend the plan again, because it is a long process and it does require a public hearing. So these are the general categories right now, which department heads will give us a little bit more detail on each one later on. So after the amendment is approved by the alders, we'll be submitting to HUD, and they're using an expedited approval process. So hopefully it'll get done fairly quickly. There are still regulatory requirements that we need to meet. Some things have been waived. The city has applied for waivers and we're granted waivers. One of them is only a 5-day public comment period. Usually we have a 30-day public comment period. So HUD is allowing no less than 5 days. So we have met that requirement, and we only need 1 public hearing, which that is for tonight. And we're developing an application process now that it's going to be a much more condensed application than the normal consolidated plan application that we usually work on. So we should have that ready about a week or so. And again, the co-chairs, you can be involved in helping with that, and all the alders will be notified. This will be on the city's website. I have a mass email list of about 300 emails that I've been sending everything out, and people have been responding pretty well to emails instead of mailings. And so that's about it for the overview. Are there any questions on that part?
Thank you. We will take questions by using the raise hand feature, or to simply raise your hand on the screen. Any questions about the overview? Alder Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a general question about your email notifications. You said you were doing about 300, you had 300 people in your email queue.
Yes, it's about 300.
So the people in that queue, other than legislators, are they business people or who's in the loop?
They're mostly nonprofit agencies throughout the city. And some are outside New Haven. Our HOPWA funding is allowed outside of New Haven. So we do have some agencies in Naugatuck. I believe there's one in Ansonia. And there's one more, but there are a couple that are outside New Haven that would be eligible for the HOPWA portion, because that's a regional grant, or a New Haven County basically grant.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions from members of the committee? Alder Douglas.
Yes, Ron, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ron, can you explain that 5-day comment you made again, please? I wasn't understanding that.
Well, HUD has a citizen participation requirement, and the city has a citizen participation plan. So in our citizen participation plan, it requires a 30-day public comment period. So we publish a draft amendment, and I put it out on the website for 30 days, notify everyone. It's published in the newspapers, It's published on the city's website, and I do send it out to that mass email. We just started using that mass email this year to try and get away from paper. It's just very time consuming sending out letters to people, but we still do it. So what the CARES Act funded, because HUD has issued that as emergency funding, they've allowed a 5-day public comment period.
Why only 5 days? Why only 5 days?
So we can expedite the process. It's basically it's emergency funding, so they want to get it out as soon as possible. So there were some waivers that the city was allowed to take advantage of, which we did apply for, and that 5-day public comment period was one of them. And it's only for this, just for this funding.
Just for this, okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Ron. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions for members of the committee? Seeing none, I would like to give the coordinators and department heads that are on the screen the opportunity to introduce yourself, state your name and address for the record, and then we'll come back around for testimony.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Good evening, committee members. My name is Dr. Mehul Dalal. I reside at 115 Linden Street in New Haven.
My name is Serena Nielsen Giorgio, Executive Director of LCI, 31 Marvel Road, New Haven, Connecticut.
Good evening, friends, and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Scott Jackson. I am Chief Administrative Officer, and I reside at 467 Hartford Turnpike, Hamden, Connecticut.
Good evening, Alders. My name is Michael Piscatelli. I'm the Economic Development Administrator for the city, and I reside at 353 Summit Street in New Haven. And if I could, Mr. Co-Chair, if possible, to allow Kathy Graves, who's here with us as well tonight, in from possibly the audience into the main room.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Kathy Graves, Deputy Director, Economic Development for the City of New Haven. Good evening, all.
Welcome, welcome. We will start in the order that you introduce yourself if you have testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to present my testimony for this important emergency funding. CSA will play the lead role in 6 of the 9 areas that Mr. Gizzi mentioned. So I'll take those 6 and then pass it along to the next coordinator or department head. The first area that we propose to make a substantial allocation to is ESG funding for rapid rehousing. As you can see in the materials, if you had a chance to review, there's a approximately $1.6 million allocation proposed to that. This rapid rehousing program is part of a bold and coordinated plan that is statewide. Some of you may have heard of the 1,000 Homes Project. This project and initiative aims to move everyone who is experiencing homelessness that had to be moved out of the shelters into individual hotel rooms. Instead of moving them back into shelters, which presents a COVID risk, is to rapidly house those individuals into permanent housing. The permanent housing will take various forms, including permanent supportive housing, but most importantly, we believe because of the economy that many individuals that will be placed in that housing will need long-term rental support, approximately 12 months, sometimes even longer than 12 months, which is why that category has a substantial allocation proposed. We would also support case managers to assist with this rapid rehousing program. The second category I'll talk about is emergency shelter. Even though we want to house as many people as we can, we do acknowledge that there is the possibility and likely the need that we will continue to need have shelters open. Shelters cannot open in their current business as usual format. They will have to be made safe for COVID. Their occupancy will have to be reduced. Some structural changes will need to be made. So we've allocated a portion of the funding for that. This would allow for shelters to purchase both purchase supplies, cleaning supplies included, and also for staffing as well. The next category is our public health category. We've allocated $250,000 from the CDBG portion of the CARES funding to public health. We left the category fairly wide, as everyone on this call, this meeting knows. The public health crisis is evolving nature. So again, in reference to Mr. Gizzi's comment early, leaving that category flexible to a range of public health needs is why we've left that category broad. At the current moment, our most pressing needs are quality assurance around our contact tracing program. The contact tracing program is one of the core strategies to keep COVID suppressed. Luckily, it's been at a very low rate in Connecticut, but nationwide cases are rising. So in order to make sure that cases do not or reduce our risk for cases rebounding in Connecticut, we need a robust contact tracing program. The state has taken over the function of our contact tracing program. However, we do believe because New Haven has very specific populations, we would benefit from an on-site contact tracing quality assistant, community health worker who would work closely with the state. We would also need to maintain, should the epidemic return to New Haven, we would like to maintain our COVID hotline. This would also require some additional funding as an example of some of the projects that could be funded under public health. The fourth category I'll talk about is our basic needs category. As individuals are asked to quarantine if they're exposed, isolate if they have the disease, or just stay home because they're at high risk, such as our elderly population or those with chronic disease. We want to make sure that those folks who need help doing that have that support either through food items or through non-food essentials. Again, anyone who's impacted by COVID-19 in those categories, we would allocate, we propose to allocate resource for them to be able to meet their basic needs while they stay at home. Finally, we have a category of at-risk individuals whose services have been potentially disrupted in the era of COVID. Mr. Gizzi mentioned the HOPWA funding that is, as it stands, directed to those living with HIV and AIDS, and we would propose to use some of those, that $160,000 that is allocated to for those who are unemployed and living with AIDS and impacted by COVID-19, continue with tenant-based rental assistance or short-term rental mortgage or utility assistance or other items in that category to help those individuals. And finally, we do have a population that, again, services have been disrupted due to COVID-19. This is the reentry population. New Haven does serve as a central point for folks being released from DOC. Again, because of direct services being limited due to COVID, we are proposing to allocate some resources to modifying services to make sure organizations can continue to serve the reentry population in a COVID-friendly manner. Mr. Chair, that ends my portion of the testimony, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Actually, we're going to have Ron share his screen as we go, I believe, section by section. I believe it's probably natural to have Mr. Piscatelli go next, I would presume.
That'd be great. Well, thank you, Alders. Thank you for the time. As we head into the summer months, it's that much harder to get some of these meetings in, and this one's very, very important. And I think all of you in the wards, certainly us here in the city, are very cognizant of the economic conditions that have been associated with the pandemic and how that's being felt not only by small businesses, but also by many workers here in the city. Just to give you some context around that, we have, at least on the documented side, 164,000 unemployed right now in the state of Connecticut. And Department of Labor is reporting 5,200 unemployed in the city of New Haven. And that's up from about 2,000 prior to the pandemic, and certainly doesn't account for the high number of workers and businesses that have seen reduced sales, reduced volume during this long period of recovery. And it's very important that we maintain a long period of recovery in order to control the virus, box it in, so we don't expect particularly many of the brick and mortar storefronts for business to return right away. And if you put New Haven in perspective relative to the rest of the state, about 40% of our region's workforce is in education or in hospitality sectors. So those are your hotels, those are restaurants, some of our retail stores that attract a tourism, frame of tourism market, as well as higher education. So all of this work that Dr. Dalal, Director Bond, all of us in the wards have been doing to control the virus is so important because we have to have a strong rebound around higher education coming back in the fall. With that, as part of the CDBG CARES program, as Ron mentioned at the outset, this also speaks not only to direct response to COVID, but also to housing insecurity and to also economic resiliency, recognizing these impacts are cascading around our society. So we've earmarked $500,000 for economic resiliency and $800,000 to address needs related to housing insecurity. And one of the reasons why Serena is on the call today, as well as Kathy Graves, is within these two larger frame programs are very specific activities speaking about housing insecurity, residents that may be at risk of long-term unemployment, potentially if the federal benefits expire, as well as small businesses that were not able to take advantage of, say, the federal economic development support programs like the SBA loans, or even the state programs that, as we know, did not always find their way into our neighborhoods. So with that, maybe Serena, you could talk a little bit about housing insecurity and the program for landlords and tenants. And then
Yeah.
Kathy could talk a little bit about small business.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Thank you all for letting us up here. From day one, we were very concerned in terms of where our challenges would be coming out of COVID. We don't know when that's going to happen in terms of housing insecurity for our residents here in the city. As many of you know, I have been for some time working with individual homeowners and tenants around issues, challenges related to rental payments, evictions, and that kind of thing. So the very first thought that we had as we knew these dollars would be coming down the pike was how do we mitigate that? We have been identified through this process over the last 3 months that there will probably be at the end of the summer somewhere around 5,000 renters, tenants in the city that will not have that will be up or in jeopardy of being evicted because of a lack of the ability to pay during this period. So one of the things that we wanted to work on, and I know that the state has been working on, we've all actually been talking to each other, which is an interesting thing, but working on specifically for New Haven residents are programming that will allow us to help pay or I have the worst computer in the world, I promise you. But our program is a landlord tenant workout program where we will pay a portion of a tenant's rent it's a voluntary program. We're not forcing any landlords or tenants in the program, but we're very excited about it. We've had a chance to talk to some of our local landlords as well as some of the tenants that are currently need us now. But luckily for the moratoriums, they are in a place where in a month or so, once that goes away, they're going to be looking for help. We're looking at putting together a 6-month program for them where we will help and assist for 6 months. In addition to that, as you all know, one of the things that we have in each of our neighborhoods ward for that, but we have our homeowners here in the city who are property taxpayers that have rental properties are also dealing with problems with paying their mortgage. Yes, there is a moratorium for many. However, that will go away. And for those that were already in trouble prior to COVID, will be in deeper trouble. So our goal would be to put some dollars into a fund that will help and assist them in mitigating some of those payments, working out with their prospective servicers, and putting together a fund that could really help us. And this is an important piece of this. There are people that they're still working, but based on reduction in salaries, based on their tenants not working. There's a list of things that we could go through to show that this is a great use of resources, and we hope that you all will support us for this program.
Great, thanks, Serena. And on the economic, we'll take questions on all these, of course. On the economic resiliency side, we actually have three tiers where the program would break out. You see the wide net that we cast in the program description. The largest of those buckets would be related to direct assistance to small businesses in need. And then we'd have two smaller ones, one to support programs and strategies within our neighborhood commercial districts and the downtown areas of focus where we're seeing, say, more brick and mortar storefronts that are vacant or specific needs related to returning a market to those districts. And then recognizing it's been a long time since we've dealt with high unemployment in the city. And right now our capacity is limited to our program managers over at New Haven Works and at the Workforce Alliance and some folks under Dr. Dalal shop in the Financial Empowerment Center, simply to support case management for the workforce. Those are all eligible uses of the program funding under economic resiliency. But the largest of those buckets would be direct assistance to small business. And maybe Kathy, you could talk a little bit about the funding that's coming together to deploy that program.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to talk about the partnership that we've put together, the Community Foundation, HEDCO, the Amor Propre Foundation, and the city come together to put together $1.5 million revolving loan fund for small businesses. It would be specific to small minority and women-owned businesses in New Haven and in the lower Naugatuck Valley. The reason why we have to expand it is because the Community Foundation has boundaries that extend to that level, and each partner has really been good about anteing up. The Community Foundation at $500,000, HEDCO at $500,000, the Amor Propre Fund at $250,000, and the city at $250,000. We're very excited about it. The first year would be interest only at 4%, and the 13th month will extend it for 5 years. And the maximum forgiveness part is 16.7%, and that's based on the allocation that the city is putting in. So we're very excited about it. We have an advisory team that will review the applications to ensure that we are working specifically with our New Haven-based businesses and women-owned businesses. We're excited. We're really excited because many of these small businesses weren't able to take advantage of the EIDL money, and for various reasons. However, what we'll do, if they're turned down for this loan fund, we're going to work with them so they can come back and reapply. We don't want to say no and just leave them out there. So we're very excited and anxious to roll out this program because there are so many small businesses that need money. The loan is $10,000 to $25,000. So if you took out, for example, a $25,000 loan, after 12 months, $4,100 of it would be forgiven. And then the balance would be spread over 5 years. So we're excited about it. And it's a micro-lending program so that it lives into perpetuity. We thought it was important that small businesses always have a pool of funds to defer to in their needs. Thank you very much.
So with that, alders, on our side, as well as Dr. Law, happy to answer any questions related to specific programs within the overall basket for CDBG Cares. Really appreciate everyone's attention and consideration of the request.
Thank you very much. I see, yeah, let's use the raise hand feature if you can, or raise your hand on the screen. Alder Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to follow up on two things. I just want to make sure, I think I heard you say this, but we want to make sure that funds are actually going to get to our communities. as far as businesses in our communities. I know you said some brick and mortar shops that may be vacant or have been vacant, but when you say that to me, I'm thinking Westville Village. I'm thinking Ninth Square, and not stores, bodegas, or other small businesses that are actually in our communities. Is there a process or to make sure they're going to get some of this funding if they qualify?
Yep. So the program, as Kathy laid it out, is not restricted in any way to brick and mortars. I use that as an example more to show the high visibility of some of the challenges we see around the city. But any business that can demonstrate impact associated with the coronavirus, lost sales, dented in some fashion, there will be program guidance that Kathy, as she mentioned, it's a partnership, right? So our money would be pooled with others. We have to follow the CDBG regulations on the competitive side. And businesses that have to show, that's why in this particular program with CARES, you have to show impact, that there was actually an impact related to the pandemic.
And the total for the joint program is 1.5 million, correct?
That's correct. And the only prerequisite at this point is to be New Haven-based, Lower Naugatuck Valley, and in business for 1 year.
And that is catering to minorities and or women, not just women and not just minorities. You muted. We can't hear you.
I was on mute. I'm sorry. No, it's for minority-owned businesses and female-owned businesses. And the only prerequisite is to have been in business for 1 year. But it's important that we get the money out to our communities.
It is. I was just trying to figure out if there was a way to have two pools and two pots.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things with CDBG CARES, right, it's the first 2.2 million, but we're setting them up as programs because as other funding becomes available, we have a structure in place. So to your point, like I think, the need is going to be far beyond what we're dimensioning here in this ask. But if we have got good structure around the programs, it sets us up for additional money. The most recent example of that was the creative fund that was put together out of arts, culture, and tourism. And we started that with what, $100,000, and they were able to double that simply because there was a way for people to support it. And that worked out really well.
And I've already started conversations with other entities that want to make a contribution to the pool. So hopefully we will be able to continue to grow it because it's a huge need out here. It's huge.
Thank you. May I ask one more question, Mr. Chair? Okay. I just want to talk about the housing insecurity piece as well. With the program you're working on for the New Haven residents, and the program, the way it's set up, is it for any New Haven resident that's having issues, whether it be a homeowner? Can it be someone on Section 8 or already in public housing as well? Or how is that program actually structured with accepting and approving applicants?
We are in the process, Alder, of finalizing the administration of the program. So those are finite details that will have to be completed. However, our goal is to look at those folks that have not, that are of that number of unemployed folks that unfortunately had to be laid off during this event, and those that do not have the ability to pay. It is for City of New Haven residents and renters as well as homeowners. Our goal is to ensure that our homeowners that are struggling, that may have lost their jobs during this crisis, has an opportunity to keep their homes. And we want to keep as many people out of the eviction court as possible through the landlord-tenant workout program. And that is what we are working on with legal aid, with the state, in terms of some of the work that they're doing. So all the details are not complete. We will have them complete once the funds have been approved. But we have been working very diligently over the last 3 months on this in terms of trying to make sure that our dollars are on the street and in our neighborhoods, period.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, forgive me, do I need to wait? Because I did have a question about, for Dr. DeLu? Or may I ask now?
I believe my co-chair wanted to say something.
Oh,
So
I'm sorry, co-chair.
No, I was just going to suggest let someone else and then come back to.
All right, I'll come back to you, Dr. DeLu. Thank you, Mr. Chairs.
Thank you.
Can you please use the raise hand feature of the vice chair, Frank Douglas.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this question is to Sabrina. So exactly what percentage of these funds will go to administration as far as the
We are-
administrative part?
Correct. We are currently, the program will be housed out of LCI. However, we will seek to engage. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
No.
Okay, I apologize for that. We
That's
will
all right. That's okay. Just repeat what you
proceed
said.
to,
Thank you.
get an administrator to run the program. However, it will be a very, we want to be able to make sure that we have paralegals. So it's our hope. And we're going to release an RFQ tomorrow to seek the services of a qualified company to do so. Clearly, we want the money on the street, Alder. And so we're not going to be paying millions of dollars for anybody to run it. And we're going to, if we can't do that, we will run it through our office. But our goal is to find an agency that can help us do it. But we haven't even sorted out the amount of what it would cost to run it because we don't want to spend a lot of money on that.
Absolutely.
We want it directly going to tenants and residents.
Well, thank you. I know I have complete faith and trust in your department, and
Thank you, sir.
hoping that you won't throw money out the window.
Nah.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Please use the raise hand feature or raise your hand on the screen. Alder Rodriguez.
Thank you, co-chair. So my question was, you talked about the brick and mortar businesses as well. How are we going to get the word out to our folks that are running the bodegas and are not aware of this information? How are we going to get that out to our communities? I know that in my area, I see a lot of small bodegas. And so if they're hurting, do they know that you guys are out there and available for them? Or are we going to go give them a call? How are they going to know? That's one question. And then the second question was also in regards to the housing. You mentioned that definitely our shelters are going to look very different. We're hoping that these numbers stay down, but nonetheless, the shelters need better upkeep, better cleaning so that we can keep folks safe. Are we going to, and you mentioned landlords and those transitioning from homeless, are you reaching out to landlords in the city of New Haven, or are the landlords reaching out to you guys that they have vacant properties so that you guys together can house individuals that are homeless into these properties and you guys are helping them cover the rent? And is that for the 6-month period? So those are just two separate things, business and landlords.
I'll start on both and just improve if I don't have it right. So on the landlord tenant workout program, what's very important there is to recognize the goal is to keep people in their homes. So a little bit different than what Dr. Dalal described about people experiencing homeless now or looking to transition into some sort of safe and secure housing right out the gate. Whereas the program that's run out of LCI is really going to look at families at risk and work very hard with landlords and tenants. So everything that you heard was informed by what we're hearing from tenants, what we're hearing from landlords, and then what the actual data is showing us, as some of those federal programs like supplemental unemployment start to expire.
Thank you.
Second, on the So it's a really good point about the businesses. So Ron said at the beginning that we notify by and large by the nonprofit, the typical community for CDBG. But we've done a lot of bit of work during the pandemic to improve our communications with businesses citywide. So that's the webinars we did. Jerry Garcia out of Small Business was able to identify a list of businesses registered in New Haven. So now we have a list, it's imported into our system. And we have the neighborhood specialists and we have the neighborhood commercial districts. So we've got an avenue to reach many more businesses in the city. And should the board approve this budget, we'll call 2 to 3 informational webinars so that people have a sense for what the programs are and the opportunities based on the criteria.
And they'll know about the webinars again. I'm just more, I'm afraid of the little bodegas on the corner that, you know, don't connect with you guys, and so they lose their businesses. And I can tell you that at Liberty Street, I know that there's Liberty, Carlisle, there are different bodegas, and I want to be able to say, you know, my hopes is that everyone is reached, but those corner bodegas that don't reach out to you guys, don't know that this is out there. I think that definitely using our LCI reps and things like that, going out there and saying, hey, this is available in the event you're hurting, because obviously they have to go through a process and be approved. So I'd love to hear, you know, you guys put a plan together for those small businesses that aren't always in a Zoom meeting, that yes, they run their business, but don't know how much is available to help their business. So, you know, moving forward, if there's anything that, again, in my ward, I know there's a lot of them, I'd be more than happy to get the word out, and you'll get a lot of phone calls, but, you know, just educating folks that this is available for them. Thank you so much for the explanation.
And Alder, this is Kathy Graves. It is our intent to reach everyone, all the small bodegas. Our information spec sheet and application has already been done in Spanish, and we will rely on each of you as well, because I will make sure that you have the information to share with your constituents. So we'll be reaching out to all of our community partners.
That's great.
We're going to do a huge blast.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Alderman Rodriguez, I believe a part of that question was directed to me, so I'll just weigh in partly here on the housing piece. So for the persons experiencing homelessness, we will be building on the outreach systems that already exist as part of the Coordinated Access Network, which is our regional approach to homelessness. And there were also, as a part of that, there's a New Haven specific landlord engagement task force that looks specifically at the issue of identifying vacant units for persons experiencing homelessness.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, it's just a point of information. The Health and Human Services Committee over the last at least 8 years have really built a strong relationship through Ron's office and the budget office in terms of building up a comprehensive nonprofit list. So much so that every single year we provide email addresses, phone numbers. I'd encourage the Community Development Committee, because this is new, this is a new phase for us, to do the same with their counterparts in terms of building up a listserv. I just want to make that recommendation to my fellow co-chair. This is new, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
I believe I see all, yep.
Thank you, co-chair. So I have a couple of piggyback questions, and just for clarity, I just want to understand about the informational piece, and I just want to thank you all for putting this together in real time in reference to the corona. I think the presentation that we've seen tonight is well put together in reference to where the money is allocated to. So I just want to say thank you about that. But it's really, really important to us that we do have the outreach. And I don't know if somebody volunteered LCI to do this. I don't know. I could have sworn I heard that, you know, LCI will be knocking on doors like Brian do right? Talking to, small businesses. I could have sworn I heard that, but I need clarification for that, right? Because if not, we can possibly hire an ambassador to, go around and do these kind of things networking wise. But if LCI got it covered and the artists can help with they blast, I think it would be great. So that's one clarification on that. That I need. And the second one, is there a disqualification for a small business? Is there what is the criteria? Is there this disqualification that they don't meet? Right. That's the second one. Just being around the city, knowing the city, and going back to that whole place of everyone doesn't do Zoom, everyone doesn't be a part of that. Some, we have a lot of old school businesses that have been around for a very long time, and they need help, right? I'm always concerned about the technology towards the paper, right? Some businesses have been around here for 40 and 50 years, right? Successfully, right? But don't do Zoom, right? But you put the paper in front of them, they do the paper, right? And my understanding that there are going to be a condensed sheet that they need to fill out to see if they honestly are eligible for these programs or for these funds. So that's 3 questions. Hopefully, someone can help me with.
We'll be on the ground with all of the program information. The way the program is set up, even with the partners, they've done a really good job of simplifying the criteria. So even if it's a flyer saying, hey, city's got a new small business program, we could put the criteria right on there. So it's, it's an early start. They could look at it and see whether or not it makes sense given where their business is.
Right.
And obviously the application forms and all that, you have to go online at some point.
But,
we're now that we're starting to open up, we've got staff on the ground again. We're out in the neighborhoods. It's refreshing for us as well, because I think we're all kind of done with the technology.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's calls daily. I get calls daily from small businesses, but it's a one-pager. The application is one page. The spec sheet is one page. And it's pretty straightforward, things that you would expect to have as a operating business: cash flow, income statement, tax.
Right. So is there a disqualification part of this? Is there?
Your credit can impact.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Approval process. However, we're going to help you with your credit, so you can come back and apply for the loan.
Yeah, see, that's a different conversation, because in this pandemic, your credit score went down because you didn't have money to pay your bills.
But that's explainable. That's something you can explain.
Okay, all right.
And the individual will be looked at on a global basis. So of course, if their credit was impacted by the past 4 months,
right,
it's explainable, and that will probably get them through the process. Because there's a real reason why.
Okay.
Okay. They won't just get a flat out no.
Okay. All right. All right. So I think thank you for that, Ms. Graves, and I think I have one more to be answered.
Okay.
And that's from our esteemed LCI director.
Yeah. You know what? We are out there. I mean, we have been throughout this entire event, and the work that we do with Kathy and with Mike and getting the word out through our neighborhood specialists. And you know what? I'm not a Zoom person, so I've been having in-person meetings. I probably shouldn't, but so we are constantly out there on the street, and we will get this information out. Our process is very simple. Having been through a couple of emergency situations in my over the last 20 years, in terms of CARES money as well as FEMA money, and being in emergency situations, we can't put a 10-page document together and expect people to utilize funds. It's going to be very simple, very easy, and we're going to work through each one of them so that folks can get the resources that they need. And this is going to be short. It's not long-term. We hope that this crisis is over and we can go back to business as usual, but we want to bring folks out on the other side of it in a place where they are not fretting and worried about being put out of their homes. So we're going to be out there. The word's going to get out. We get dozens of calls every day from people that are worried that once this moratorium is lifted, that they're not going to have a place to live. And we're not going to allow that to happen.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I'm gonna let somebody else take the floor. But as we lead in the world in this COVID pandemic, let's lead the world in this as well in reference to how we can move things along. What comes to mind is the small businesses of barbershops and salons and stuff like that did not get any relief. Like they get paid because people go into the shops, right? And they didn't get any opportunity for 4 months, right? They weren't making any money, right? So, the money comes down, but they don't get the opportunity to rebuild. I think we need to be looking at those parts too. But I have all the confidence in us to get things right. So I just want to say thank you. And we will be following up.
I just want to add to the barbershop and hair salon conversation. We were able to do something separate for them. And it was a webinar on their reopening. It was an additional webinar that they requested on understanding how to set up their business and understanding the financials of their business. And I was surprised at the number of barbershops and hair salons that came out in support of that event. And they've asked for more one-on-one. So we are working with them.
Thank you so much. It'd be great. We can get them some money.
We will.
Thank you so much. We have Alder Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also share the concern about how we get the word out to those who've been affected, and wanted to ask, is there a budget for outreach? Is there an amount for outreach? With $5 million, 1% would be $50,000 to get the word out. I'm not saying that's the right amount, but is there a budget for outreach? And is there a plan that's been made to Alder Wingate's point of hitting people on various channels, whether it's in the mail or on the Everbridge system or whatever the various media different folks consume on social media?
So there's the formal process that's required by CDBG, of course, and we've given you some insights on supplemental outreach, but I think we're hearing the consensus that the alders would like to see more of a specific plan around that. So, let us come back at you. We'll give you a memo. And, I think also I think we all appreciate the fact that you're volunteering as well to help, because we don't hit everyone in every neighborhood. So all of that would be really appreciated.
Do we have goals for the number of residents and businesses served and targets for what the average person or business might receive in assistance?
So maybe we could just do some averages based on 1 to 2 months of gap assistance on rent and what that impact might look like, and the same on small business, what the upset number is on the loans.
Right. We're actually looking at serving Alder somewhere between 4.
And on the loans, it's up to 25,000, right, Kathy? Many will be smaller than that.
It's up $10,000 to $25,000, and we think on average it'll be about 15 to 18,000.
So I'm sorry, I apologize. We are looking to serve with this allocation, this first tranche. Let me just throw that out. This first tranche of money to serve somewhere between 400 and 500 residents, tenants, and homeowners here in the city across the board.
And are there any restrictions or guidelines around how much of the grant is spent on internal administration and how much gets dispersed to nonprofits or other partners?
Yeah, you see a line in the budget specific to that Ron put in for the admin side.
I think I can answer that one. The admin cap, the max that we can spend on the admin cap is, it's 10% for the ESG funding. I believe it's 10% also for HOPWA and 20% for CDBG.
But
so those are the max.
Is that administrative line though dealing with compliance with the federal government, or is that also the administration of these programs themselves?
It is a combination of both. They're part of the admin cost is for preparing the substantial amendment, oversight and federal compliance and monitoring in HUD reporting, because we do have to report on this funding just like we normally do with the consolidated plan funding. And also part of the CARES Act has been allocated, funds have been allocated to the Inspector General Office. So they will be looking at this funding. So, you know, it is designed to be emergency funding and get out there quick, but eventually HUD is going to look at it. So we need to make sure that nonprofits and city departments and city activities are in compliance with HUD regulations.
Okay, but it sounds like beyond that, there's additional money that would need to be spent on administering, say, the Small Business Assistance Program, right? Whether that's internal, someone internally running that program. Is that correct?
So on the small business program, our plan is to use existing staff to hold our side of it down.
Okay.
And then there will be a program administrator that helps with the program intake, all the applications that come in, supporting the review committee, keeping the paperwork in order and all of the backup documents. And that cost is somewhere between 30 and 50,000, I think, at our initial estimate. And as you know, that's money well spent because that provides good architecture to the program.
Well, would it be possible for us to get a more specific breakdown of like what we're spending internally on running these programs and what is getting sent out to partners? Because the numbers are quite large and it's kind of opaque as to how much is staying within the city and then how much is being dispersed.
Mm-hmm.
Through the chair, if we could request that.
So noted.
Thank you.
Okay, we're actually gonna let other alders who might have asked a question, ask questions. So Alder
Thank you,
Rodriguez, make sure you write it, you know, just, and Alder Edwards, I didn't forget. Alder Saban.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question about the small business program, following up on Alder Wingate's questions. Can you talk a little bit more about how credit factors into who is eligible for grants through the program, and whether that process is required from the federal government or that's something that we're doing on our own, and how you think that's going to affect businesses in the city?
Well, we've lowered the minimum credit score to 600, and that's just the minimum that anyone will loan funds. And HEDCO is our underwriter, and they do a lot of CDBG underwriting for loans. However, like I said earlier, if someone has maybe a 575 and they've been hit by COVID, there's an explanation there. And we see that they have been making money all along. However, this glitch really impacted them, then that's someone that's going to be considered. So we're going to look at individuals on a global basis.
All right, that's good to hear. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other alders that might have asked a question that may have a question at this time? Okay, now we're gonna go round robin again. Alder Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a basic question for Dr. Jalal, and you may have answered it already, but when we were talking about the public health and safety part of it, I know you said it was kind of broad and you wanted to have it broad because things could change and we might have to change things. But you talked about quality assurance specifically when it came to the contact tracing aspect of it. My question on that, you may not have it set in stone, but what do you mean when we say quality assurance? Do you mean IT help? Do you mean training? Do you mean support or auditing for your contact tracers? Like what would kind of, in your opinion, fall into that quality assurance category?
Sure. Thanks for the question. That's a good one. Because the state has taken over the contact tracing program, they are the ones administering the program. So in my view, what we would need is an on-the-ground coordinator here in New Haven to work with and communicate with the state contact tracers who would have primary responsibility, but to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks, since we locally, know our neighborhoods and our communities best. So it's that type of quality assurance that that I had in mind for that piece.
Okay, and is that a
We would not have an oversight role, right? We would not have an oversight role with the state on this. So it's more making sure that the program is tight for our communities.
So is that someone we already currently have working for us is going to take on that responsibility? Or are we doing a temporary or supplemental hiring in order for a person to do that?
Yeah, so that we don't have anyone on staff at this time that could do that. So it would be a temporary. That's right.
And I do also see another piece in here where you touched on improving Wi-Fi access in different areas. How would that work? And is that a true, or is that really what you're trying to do? Or is that just part of this 250,000 in case more money comes through for this? And how would you?
Yeah, I think that language is in there again for the sake of leaving it broad, but when we develop the language, but at this point, we don't think it'd be, enough to allocation to actually do a broader Wi-Fi access to the system. We're working on some separate strategies to try to get a more universal access to broadband and Wi-Fi, because it impacts more than just public health. It's impacting education, impacting televisits and whatnot. So should we need to apportion a part of that 250,000, that'll be available. But at this point, I don't think there'll be enough funds to do that. So we'll look at alternate sources of funding outside of CARES to work on that.
Okay. And as far as qualifications needed to be that liaison for the coordination of the contact tracing stuff, how much would we be looking to spend to do something like that? And, you said there's no one that can do that or is doing that now. Is there no one qualified to do that? Or is there no one you have time that can actually be pulled that we currently?
Oh, we have. Oh, okay. Yeah, no. We have plenty of folks who are qualified. Our public health nurses are a wonderful resource as a potential to be qualified. But we don't have anyone we can pull and assign to that role at this point, is what I meant by that.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions at this time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any other alders that haven't asked any questions that may have a question? Seeing none, Alder Rodriguez.
I would like to have one.
Oh, Alder Clyburn, sorry.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say thank you. Then thank you to my colleague, Kim Edwards. You asked a lot of questions that mean a lot to me, but this is one also for the doctor. Are they going to be paying people increase in their salary, the ones that you're choosing to do this, or are they going to just do it with the same pay?
In the scenario I was just describing to Alder Edwards, is that we would actually have to hire potentially somebody new to do this. So it wouldn't be someone that's assigned from current staff. It would be new temporary staff we'd have to bring on. So they'd be brought on at the salary that would be appropriate to their job description, or they could be brought on as a consultant if that was the way that made the most sense.
You were breaking up. I didn't hear you. You were breaking up.
Okay, I'll try again. The scenario I described to Alder Edwards was if we could assign someone in the current department to work on this. I don't envision that that's an immediate possibility. So whoever would take on this role would either come on as a temporary hire or potentially consultant, and would be remunerated according to what their qualifications would be for that job description.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Alder Rodriguez.
Thank you. To add to what Alder Edwards said, Dr. Dela, is there a possibility to, instead of having to hire someone, aren't the Yale School of Medicine students doing some tracing, and also some of the nurses for the New Haven school system? I had called the other day, and my understanding is that there is a nurse who's never left from 54 Meadow Street because she's doing tracing, and also some of the Yale School of Medicines. That way, again, I think we're looking at dollars that are coming in, and we want to be able to utilize that funding on the ground, helping people. I mean, no disrespect, if we need to hire someone, yes, but if we have folks that are capable of doing it and have been doing it, it would be great to utilize this funding that may go away fairly quickly with all the need. That was my first portion. And then going back to Co-Chair Wingate, I definitely, want to again mention that we can utilize our new neighborhood specialists that know the area, so that that portion of the business, they're on the ground already. They know their neighborhoods. They know what brick and mortar bodegas there, or barbershop and things like that. So let's try to utilize the services that are on staff already, and that monies is gonna go a long way. I find that sometimes, we hire, or it goes into various pieces, and then we're back to square one, where our vulnerable residents aren't getting, they're getting a service, but they're not getting the 100% service. So I just wanted to put that out there. If we have folks on the ground now that can continue following the tracing, and also put the feet to the ground with our neighborhood specialists, definitely let's utilize that, and keep the alders aware of what, again, different wards, what the businesses are, and if they need a hand, that we're here. So that way our monies goes a long way. Let's utilize this to service as many people as we can. That's all, Co-Chair Rakeem. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
I can start by responding to the question about the tracing. Yes, you're correct. The Yale students were working on doing direct contact tracing, but that program transitioned about 6 days ago to state's hands, and the state is administering that program now. With respect to the nurses potentially doing this, yes, the nurses have been doing this, but what we're planning for is a scenario where schools open back up again. And if they do open back up again, we will not have that nursing resource starting in September. So again, this is trying to bridge a longer term gap there. Again, with the having a central point of contact to do contact tracing in New Haven, again, it is such a valuable part of the strategy to keep the disease mitigated, that we think having a local point of contact that the state can call on to say, for example, oh, there was a baseball game, and we're trying to identify all the contacts that came to the baseball game. Well, when you're working at the state level, you don't know the local players, whereas someone who's local can just pick up the phone and call me or call Director Bond and say, hey, do you know who was involved in that baseball game last weekend? We think we need to do contact tracing there. So we think there's a real value to having a point person. I call them a quality assurance person, but it's really just to enhance the local contact tracing efforts. Because as you know, when things go to the state, things become a little more diffuse. So we want to maintain that presence here in New Haven. That's the thought behind having a point of contact tracing. But if the nurses are available, that would be a good role for them. But if they're back at school, then we can't use them.
Right, but the thing is that we're looking at school, and then Alderbrook Cream, co-chair, I promise this is my last comment. I understand that, but as we are looking at schools that are good, it's going to be different starting in September. We're not going to have a full Monty of kids in the school. I'm just saying, if for instance, in my job, if I'm needed somewhere else and I have a lull in my own, let's utilize our funding to the max in the best way we can. Let's say it's your household and we want to utilize that $100, not for one pair of shoes, but at least for two, then let's work on that. I don't mean to use that as an example, but let's stretch the dollar. Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks. Point well taken. Appreciate it.
So my fellow co-chair, you had your hand up.
I don't know if you wanted to follow up on any of that, co-chair. If you do,
I
you can.
do.
Yeah. So please,
how'd you know?
please,
Wow.
yeah, because we are co-chairs.
How'd you know?
You go right ahead.
All right. So, all right. I have not given my personal opinion just because I'm trying to be neutral. So now I'm going to give my opinion. So, I'm of the strong belief that there actually needs to be a representative of some sort from community services, economic development, special fund role to engage in the community alone. 100%, their role is to engage on the messaging of what's happening. I understand there are departments that are already doing things, but I believe that there needs to be an individual for each subsection, whatever that looks like, representing and messaging to the community so that that is their job 100%. That is my personal opinion. And being that the budget that's been presented is very opaque, I feel like I can give that opinion. So I'm sure that's the thought that you might have been aligned with as well, Mr. Co-Chair. Okay, all right, we're of the same mind. So that is our recommendation. It is not policy per se, but we have a strong opinion about it. So there you go. Alders, well, there was someone that had a hand up. Any alders that haven't spoken that would like to speak? Seeing none, Mr. Co-Chair, you want to take the second half here?
Yes, I can. Is there anyone going to present from the public on this particular item? Is willing to speak on these items? Are we going to have the public speak tonight, Co-Chair?
Yes.
So please, administration, hang around as we go into the public portion of our meeting tonight. Is there anyone from the public going to speak to this CDBG funding tonight? Okay.
So we had Mr. Brooks.
Okay.
Mr. Brooks, there you are. Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Good evening to the alders and to all the co-chairs. My name is Darrell Brooks, and I reside here in the city of New Haven. And I'm just wanted to, I sent in a written testimony, but I just felt compelled to just come on and to briefly make this request of the committee. One, I want to thank all of the administrators that are working on this during this COVID-19, as well as the mayor. This certainly is unprecedented times, and this, I think, has challenged all of us. With that being said, I would like the committee to take a closer look at one of the items that was not considered, that should be considered in this pandemic, and that is housing stability as it relates to vacant properties and blighted properties. This pandemic, I think, has exacerbated and will exacerbate the housing crisis as it relates to homeownership as well as rental properties. And so I just want to encourage the community. I know this is a lot to try to squeeze into and a lot to try to peel off this one apple. But I think it's important to not forget the bigger, broader picture, and that is in keeping with HUD about removing blight and slum, and also providing opportunities for individuals to be able to stabilize our neighborhood and our communities. One of the things that you should take and consider is that in the event, God forbid, that individuals lose their home or houses remain vacant and blighted, speculators are going to come in, and we all know what happens when they come into our communities and take these properties up. It really, really puts a strain on the folks that are remaining in those communities. And so working with nonprofits such as Beulah Land, Neighborhood Housing, and or New Opportunities allows us to continue the work that we're doing during this pandemic to strengthen the fabric of our communities by providing homeownership and rental opportunities. And so I just want to just put that out there that, you know, let's not lose sight of our broader picture of what we're trying to do as a community, and the mission that HUD has overall. And because I believe COVID is going to impact that significantly. So I'm asking you to do what nonprofits have been doing for years, and that is squeezing every dollar that we can find and manage to do the work and doing more with less. And so I'm going to ask that you not eliminate the broader vision of stabilizing our communities by providing homeownership and housing opportunities for home buyers, first-time home buyers, as well as for renters. Thank you for the time, and thank you for, again, all of the work that all of you are doing. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Pastor Brooks. Is there any questions for Pastor Brooks from my colleagues? Seeing none, thank you. We will take the next question.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hey everyone, this is Jaywan Carter. I live at 106 Poplar Street, New Haven, Connecticut. This is a great meeting, very informal, very informational. And one of the things I do want to add is that you know, New Haven itself, it's one of those things where if you're not part of the network, you could be left out. Despite how successful you are, despite your relationships, timing is of the essence. For experience, I remember when we had money coming down from the state. This is about maybe 8 years ago, where it was actually a grant in which small business owners, minority, also women-owned business, they were able to get up to $10,000, whether they were a startup or a business that was actually already in existence. And that money could have been used for equipment, it could have been used for salaries. But the fact that that pool of money was here, and if you were not part of that network, you missed out. And what I'm afraid of is that this opportunity can result in that same thing. Because once the word get out, especially for those who are actually part of the network, there are going to be many people who are not in that sphere that would miss out on this opportunity. So I think that it's very important that we look at, when we say neutrality, but we look at a position where there is someone that's in the community, or maybe several folks that are in the community, to make sure that we cover the demographics for language and just the fact that we want to avoid situations like that, because at the end of the day, a lot of folks were already kind of like teetering with the economy, working hard, but at the end of the day, they were teetering, and this just put a dent in it. It put more of like exacerbation on the fact that because there were not really much of a float or on secure grounds, this pretty much put them in a bad position. So I just wanted to put that out there. If we could actually look at how exactly are we going to take care of some of the folks who may have missed out on things during the past, but also with the situation that has happened, they're not looking too well financially or on a solid ground. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there any questions for Jaywan? Seeing none, thank you. Next question, if there's someone else from the public that want to speak on this CDBG grant. Okay. Seeing none,
May I ask a question? My name is Colin, and I'm a reporter from the New Haven Independent. And my question is, in your opinion, Alders, is the CBDG?
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Colin Chiang, and my address is 37 Trumbull Street. And my question is, in your opinion, is the CARES Act funding adequate to address all of the needs of residents in New Haven, given the pandemic? Because when you look at the sum, it breaks down to like about $6 per New Haven resident. And I was wondering if you think that there's a gap that is not being met, that will not be met with this funding, and that might be met if more federal funding could be allocated. Thank you.
We appreciate the question, and we will submit your question for testimony, but it is not a custom that we take questioning from members of the press in this forum. We will gladly engage you after this public hearing has adjourned. So thank you for your testimony. It will be submitted for the record, but we are not inclined to answer the question at this time. Thank you.
If y'all didn't know that, that's called having each other back. So is there any more want to speak from the public on this particular item? Okay, so I'm going to say it again. Is there any more testimony from the public want to speak to this item? This is the third time. Is there anyone want to speak to this item from the public? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to close the public portion.
So moved.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Extensions? The ayes have it. I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. We will now at this time, the chair will entertain a motion to move item number 0197, order authorizing the mayor to accept the CARES Act funding awarded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, Coronavirus, HOPWA, and Emergency Solutions Grant, Coronavirus, ECG funds, and of course, with all of its attachments and proposed plans.
So moved.
Second.
Hearing it moved and second. We will now have discussion on the item presented. Mr. Co-Chair.
No, I appreciate all the work, you know, everybody coming together so fast on working on this particular project because it's so needed. I think that we have to move it. Most definitely favorable with the suggestions that we made around it. You know, it was a lot of conversation around the contact tracing piece and stuff like that. So we need to follow up on that as a suggestion, and then, you know, thinking about the administrative part about how we're going to get the information out and packaging department to information. I think we should be doing that as well. We talk about a lot of money here, and we want everybody to get their fair share in reference to this opportunity. So, you know, that's my opinion on this particular grant. I think we should find it favorable.
Alder Edwards, you should ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have a question, and my question was regarding, I want to say governance, because that's the only word I can think of right now. But is there a way for us to come back together and re-examine how the funds are being spent? And we put a threshold of, I don't want to say 30 days, but 60, 90 days, or periodically check to see how the funds have actually been used, or to make sure they're being used properly? Is that something we can request, or is that something I would have to do through the chairs?
You would make that request through the chairs.
Okay, well, I would like to put that on record that it was is a request I would like to make through our chairs to make sure this money's being spent in the right places.
So noted.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Alder Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd echo the concern from Alder Edwards about trying to get more information as the funds are rolled out, or perhaps we could workshop this in a month or in some period of time to get more information about how things are being dispersed. And I appreciate the chair's taking into consideration the request for additional detail, given that we have, in some cases, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, for ESG, for example, it's almost $1.7 million. And right now we only have a paragraph describing how the funds are being spent. So I think we really do need to see more information about more details about how it breaks down both what's being spent on the city side and externally, how much is spent on administering the program versus getting it into the hands of folks in the community. And then, like others have noted again and again, how we're going to do outreach to businesses and residents. But as Chair Wingate said, the funds do need to move. This is emergency funding and it needs to get out there. So we shouldn't delay the process as we request that information. But I do think it would be beneficial for the board to have it before we vote as a full board. And like Alder Edwards said, to have a picture of what's going on through an oversight role as the funds are being dispersed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alder Clyburn.
Yes, thank you, chairs. I also echo the words of my colleagues, Alder Edwards and Alder Winters. I don't have to re-say that, but I echo those words. I just hope this money make it where it needs to be really given into our communities, and just thinking about our businesses and the two people who testified tonight, Mr. Carter and the pastor. I just hope it make it where it needs to go. I really do, because our communities really miss out. It's been echoed, because a lot of them do not communicate the way that the city, is used to communicating. So I just hope the money make it to our businesses in our communities and for our people.
Vice Chair Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Chair Rakeem, and Chair Wingate. I've been quiet, and I just want to say this, and I'm very adamant and compassionate about what I'm saying. There has to be checks and balances. I echo all of the words of my colleagues, but too many times have our neighborhoods, the businesses in our neighborhoods have been left out. Either they don't have the right documentations, or they were late getting the paperwork in, or however. It's just, we cannot let this happen this time. So it has to be some checks and balances through the chairs. We ask that the the administration make reports to us. And I will definitely be out in my community looking at the mom and pops, small businesses, and making sure that they are, everybody's been affected. The neighborhood of needs and the suburban neighborhoods, they all been affected, but these neighborhoods of needs need more attention. And I just want to make sure that they get the proper attention, especially in the Hill, that they need. Thank you, Mr. Chairs.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you so much, Alder Herb. And I know you're gonna do a wonderful job over there. In reference to the process, just for clarification for us in reference to things, as we find this favorable tonight and we move forward with this, because we got to do it, right, in reference to money and timing, right? Before they go to the full board, we will see where the money is going, right? And then at that point, we will be able to decipher if we find it favorable or not in reference to things, because once they put the applications out, right, we gotta receive the applications back, see where the money is going, and then we have to vote on this. So just for a point of clarity, I want y'all to understand how that's going to work. This is going to go out to people. We saying let's knock on doors, let's talk to small businesses. You know your neighborhood. I know my neighborhood. You know your neighborhood. We will see where the money is going before we vote on it. Tonight, we just honestly getting the money, but where the money is going is a different process, and we will be voting on that in July. And then it will go to the full board in August to be, accepted, that whole process. But we will see where the money is going and who was awarded the money. But tonight it's just moving the money.
Totally second everything my co-chair just said. I would like to add one more layer to it. And that is, in the same way that we do CDBG, we will have the opportunity to present amendments. Okay, it's the same process. The only catch is we will need to do this. The budget applications need to be approved by the committee in July in order to accept the money in July. Now, I'm actually going to this is a rare moment, I'm going to let Ron jump in just in case I may have said something wrong. So, Ron.
Okay, so what we're basically doing tonight is just approving the general categories. There will be a application process, and the chairs can be involved in this in determining who will get funding. But the main thing is right now is just approving these general categories so we can submit the amendment to HUD, and then because it's still going to take a little while. There are, like I was saying earlier, the regulatory requirements that we have to meet in order for HUD to release the funds. So we can't really delay that anymore by having an application process like we normally do before we submit everything to HUD. So, but actually what this is similar to in the consolidated plan process when we have the home funding. So with the home funding, the committees are approving categories like this, and then LCI would take applications on a rolling basis. So they have a category for down payment assistance. They have a category for housing. So just one lump sum, and it's not going to an individual agency. So then during the year, LCI will accept applications on that, just on that total for that category. So it's been done in the past. It's a little bit different because we're using CDBG, ESG, and HOPWA in that same manner. But the alders will have an opportunity to look at applications and make recommendations for funding also. Does that help?
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely it helps.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So I think I lost my co-chair for a second. I think I've lost my co-chair. But if there's no more, okay, he's back.
Well, actually, I'm sorry. We were receiving additional support concerning this. So everything Ron said, yes, we agree. But we first for tonight, we need to discharge this item so that it is on the docket for our next full board meeting. Tonight, we can also require that a budget is submitted to us at some point in July. We can do that. We are within our right to do that. But someone will need to propose that. And I believe the funding is hopefully to be allocated in August at some point. So either way, we don't want to be impeding the process, but we certainly want to, see what's happening. Is that okay and clear for members of the committee? All right. So I just made a lot of suggestions. A lot of these suggestions now need to become motions so that we could move on. Oh, Alder Winter, you have a question?
It was answered, but I would be happy to make a motion if you would like. I would move that we discharge the item so that the full board can vote on it at the July meeting, with the stipulation that the more detailed budget be presented to this joint committee for our July meeting, where we may make amendments as we see fit.
Second.
Hearing it moved and second, discussion.
I think that what you said, Chair Brackeen, makes a lot of sense in terms of fleshing this out and addressing a lot of the concerns that came up around oversight and outreach during the committee meeting we just heard, during the hearing we just had. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have one, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I think this would be good because this would make sure that there's no disparity in any of this. So that would be good.
Discussion. Seeing none, we will now take the vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
Oh, okay. All opposed?
Mr. Co-Chair, just for the
Yes.
for the record, I just want to make sure that what you all are voting on is what was proposed plus all of the amendments that have been submitted subsequent.
Yes.
Yes, we accept that.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any opposition? Any abstention? Seeing none, the item is discharged as amended with all of its amendments.
I make a motion. I make a motion, we adjourn.
Oh, actually, I just want to make one statement.
Okay.
So because of what we just did, it is on this committee that we make ourselves available in July. Okay. I don't know what the date is going to be, but we will not be the reason we hold up this process. So I just want to make that clear. So everyone I'm not sure when the date is, but just be prepared because we don't want to hold up this process.
I'll be late, but I'll be there.
All right.
I make a motion. We adjourn. Thank you, Co-Chair.
So moved.
Oh, Jesus.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Good night.